Welcome everyone to the Breezy Home Service Insider Series. I'm your host, as always, CJ Todd, and I'm so excited that you're here today. We are now expanding to serve more than just the HVAC space. We want to bring people on to give you the tools and strategies, tips and tricks to help you build a profitable home service business, whether you're in HVAC, plumbing, electrical. And so today it's official. We're expanding to the Home Service Insider Series. Today, we are talking about the 3 keys for coaching high performance teams, and that's mindset, KPIs, and real behavior changes. So before we get into the content today, I want to share a little bit about Breezy for those of you who might not know about us. So at Breezy, our mission is very simple. We help home service companies capture more opportunities, serve customers better, and help grow your business with the systems that actually work out in the field. We have a full field management software platform that has very powerful AI tools integrated into it. And that means, managing customers, jobs, technicians, estimates, invoices, the list goes on. And the second way we help companies grow in this space is with Breezy's AI-powered growth tools, things like automated customer engagement, after-hours AI CSR, our online booking widget, and our AI-powered chatbot. And those features can sit right on top of your existing software. So actually, no need to switch. And I'm really excited to get into today's content with my friend and friend of the show, Elise Radawitz, the founder of Velocity Leader, and she's one of the most respected leadership development experts serving the trades. She works with home service companies across the country, and she really focuses on helping them implement the strategies and the leadership techniques that will help them actually make those real behavior changes, like we're going to learn today. And her specialty is helping leaders move beyond just reviewing the numbers and start really coaching the mindsets and the behaviors that actually drive performance. Today, she's going to walk us through those 3 keys, like I mentioned before: mindset, KPIs, and behavior change. So without further ado, Elise, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you on today.
Thank you, CJ. Excited to be here. Yeah, I love the angle of where the show is going, and happy to support you and Breezy, of course. But thank you for the opportunity. So thank you for plugging the Forward Motion series we have starting next week. It is really, when you think about it, it's kind of like a leadership tune-up for getting our managers ready. A lot of times what I'm noticing working with home service businesses is that we'll get the trucks ready, they'll get them all ready to go, marketing spooled up, but what we tend to forget is that our service managers, our department managers, like how to help them lead through the busy season. We get everything else ready and we don't necessarily always set them up. So what they end up doing is firefighting, jumping in the weeds, doing things that they've always done, but because they've maybe never been taught a better way, or a way for them to show up with more calm, with more confidence in knowing how to have some of those difficult conversations. So those are really the tactical pieces that we're going to get into with the Forward Motion series. I own Velocity Leader. We're in our 3rd year of business. Last year, I was grateful enough from, I would just say, my clients, my friends in the industry. I was nominated for the 40 Under 40 award, and having nearly 20 years of experience in the industry, 10 of that on the HVAC side, on the wholesale side. It's just, I love this industry. I'm super grateful to be able to serve the contractors and distributor partners I have, just to create leaders that are, like I was saying, are more calm, confident under pressure. Because I don't think we've always had the best role models in the industry on that. Sometimes it's a little bit more of the blow up and deal with a kind of fallout later. So really, that's what I'm aiming to do in terms of what we do at Velocity Leader and how we do it differently. That's the biggest thing that I've seen, is just how do we address the human side of leading people. On the personal side, aside from kind of the business, I'm a girl mom. I have a 9-year-old. She is wonderful and keeps us on our toes. And my happy place, which, well, CJ got to learn firsthand. That's how we even got started in this whole friendship way back when, was either it's at the cabin, but he and I met on the golf course for a tee off for the trades event. that Women in HVAC was sponsoring. I've been on the education committee for Women in HVAC for a couple of years now. Love that organization. And then partnered with quite a few Carrier Bryant distributors or contractors. So appreciate that community as well as ABC of Wisconsin. And it's Women in Construction Week, so I would be remiss if I didn't mention Metro Builders Association in Wisconsin. It's Women in Construction Week. I'm speaking at an event tomorrow. Those are a few of the places that are near and dear to my heart and places that I've really found an amazing community within this industry. So those are just a few organizations I wanted to do a little shout out with. All right,
Yeah.
so the forward motion series, we kind of covered this already. I just want to really give you a bit more information. Oops, sorry about that. But I want to give you like I'm very upfront in terms of pricing, so I just want to be very transparent on that. If you want any more information, I am offering $300 off for the Breezy group today, so you can enter that in when you register. But we'll get to all that later on. Why you're here, right? Why you're here is to learn about mindset, accountability, scorecards, all these different things of, okay, we have all this data, right, at our fingertips, but sometimes we don't always know exactly what to do with it, how to coach to it. I think those are the nuanced pieces of leading people and leading people well that I want to talk about today. I was actually just in Chicago yesterday working with a group of residential contractors, owners, and we talked about this very thing. Okay, how do we put KPIs in place with existing employees that we've never used, that have not been used to us measuring things? How do we have that conversation? How do I hold people accountable? So those are the tactical and practical things I want us to get to today. Before I get to that, I'm going to talk about a few maybe uncomfortable truths that I have come to notice in the industry. First, and this is one I will die on this hill, please stop promoting your best techs into management and thinking that they'll know how to coach or hold people accountable or develop people. If we've never equipped them with those skills, we can't expect them to just know it. A lot of times, I'm not saying don't promote from within. 1,000% promote your best technician, put that person into a leadership role, your best service tech, make them a service manager. Absolutely. What I'm saying is you can't leave it to chance. And if we've never had taken the time for us to model leadership well for them, we can't assume that they're going to know how to do it well. And I would say this goes for contractors, distributors. Like I see this across the industry that we promote our best individual contributors into management, and then we wonder why they aren't able to hold people accountable, number one, but really lead and manage them well. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Technical skills, again, they don't translate into human skills. They can be really great technically, but when you move into a management role, you are going to need a different set of skills on top of course, the technical skills, but really your focus is going to shift when you're a leader or manager. And what I want to encourage people, one of the mindset shifts I want to just kind of hit right out the gate is this idea of accountability. Accountability doesn't equal micromanagement. And one of the questions I just got asked last week from a GM that I work with, he goes, how do I hold my people accountable without being a nag? And I was like, well, first of all, points for honesty. Appreciate you asking that question because I get that perspective and having if you have that viewpoint, you're probably going to be less likely to have those conversations or kind of check in with people because you don't want to micromanage them. My encouragement for him was, well, you're not setting this standard. They've already agreed to that standard, right? He was talking about technicians specifically. I said, you've already gotten buy-in from them in terms of what good looks like, what you want. He basically asked them, what does a good install look like? What do we think that looks like? They all went around the room, said what they all thought. And so when he's checking in with them and saying, hey, you didn't have the notes on that job, or hey, we didn't get the information, we weren't able to build a customer out, those are him holding them accountable to the standards that they had already set. So that's just one of those things that we'll talk about that more in a little bit. But accountability doesn't equal micromanagement. I want you to make that perspective or mindset shift right away. The other uncomfortable truth I want to talk to leaders about real quick is the lack of clarity. If there is a lack of clarity on what is expected, that is not on the employee, that's on you. Double check that you for sure communicated what the expectation is, where they can find it, what their resources are if they don't have that. These are the things that I'm going to want you to take accountability for. Now, it's on them. If I have done all of those things right, they know what is expected, where to find it, all of that, then the lack of execution is on their end. And that is where we're going to have a coaching conversation to go, okay, what part of the process are you not? Is there something you're struggling with? Are you not understanding it? like those are the parts where I'm going to invite them into it to make it a conversation. So all of that to say, if you're in leadership, you're in the people business. And CJ, so I can make sure that I'm not just talking to people that are. I'd like to know if you can launch the first poll. I'd like to know what your role is at the company that you're at right now. That can give me an idea of what stories, data points, things like that to bring out in the next 45 minutes or so.
Yeah, and Elise, maybe you want to talk a little bit more about kind of some of those points you just brought up, but I'm thinking specifically, in keeping kind of like a calm, cool, collect ownership, kind of culture. Like, how do you, as maybe a service business that's running around maybe like a chicken with their head cut off, how do you embody that calm, cool, collect, that patience, that kind of consistency as an owner?
So part of it is doing the work for yourself. So, and I know you guys are gonna be like, gee, more pressure, more stuff put on my plate. I hear you. However, we can't, I don't know about you, but I can't model something that I've never actually done for myself, right? I can't practice something that I'm not, like if I'm gonna preach it, I sure as heck better practice it because I can think about leaders that I've been in my career with where maybe they've read all the books and they have all the one-liners, but they're really not, they're saying one thing and doing another. And that's the quickest way you can lose respect on the team in terms of having like then that you're a leader that I have to follow, not that I want to follow. So part of this is the invitation of it. Maybe you are an owner and you're going, I've never invested in my own leadership skills. I've gone to sales training, product training, technical training, but I've never thought about leadership skills. Okay, that's fair. So that's the part of the experience that I bring, no matter if it's a 90-day series or a 7-month series that I do. It starts with just going, it's that inner work. That's the part of the what I've seen in the industry is we run to the tactical, practical things. And I'm doing that today, of course, giving you some things that you can put into action right away. The longer behavior change is going to take time where you kind of pay attention to where am I at? Where is my mindset at right now? How do I channel that calmness? Part of it is knowing that we have people in their roles, and I hired them to do that job, and I want to trust them to do that job. That's part of it. And so to answer your question as succinctly as I possibly can, it's doing the work first and then modeling it after the fact, and giving yourself grace throughout that entire process because it's not going to be like you just update your mindset overnight like we do update an iPhone, right? Like it takes time. And we will fall into previous habits until we establish new ones, and that just becomes part of how we show up. CJ, what do we have for results? Where are we at for roles in this particular audience?
Yeah, it looks like most are owners.
Okay, awesome. At least I'm not speaking out of turn by talking to you about this. Okay, perfect. Well, that's really the angle that I was coming at from this conversation. It'll be very similar to what we had yesterday, and that's excellent. We'll just kind of build from there. So let's get into it in terms of the three keys, right? Three keys for coaching our service teams. The first one, and you may have heard this phrase, what gets measured gets done. And what I mean by that, and we talked about, I made reference to this a little bit earlier. Accountability doesn't equal micromanagement. Now, we're talking about outcomes, we'll talk about tracking, and we'll get to feedback. That's one of the other pieces of, okay, now that I have the outcome and I am tracking it, how do I give feedback? Where the issue can come in with accountability is that at times it can feel like or look like micromanagement when really it's a clarity problem. Maybe we have the data in the system. And I'll give you an example. One of the contractors that I was working with, they started doing scorecards for their entire team, a public scorecard. And we'll talk about public versus private scorecards, dashboards, whatever you want to call it. And one of the things is he was realizing is that the technicians, it was very cool. He was like, I was excited to see them all huddled around the TV to see the latest scorecard come out before we went into their weekly meeting. What was interesting about it was that the techs then started asking, well, like, how did you guys figure the numbers out? Or where can I have access to those numbers? Like, what does it look like for me? And the manager welcomed that because he was like, okay, they actually care, number one. Number two, when they know what's expected, they have transparency on their numbers, and even I would say go as far as to give them ownership on some of those numbers. Like you're going to bring that to the next one-on-one. There is a level of clear expectation that's held across the organization. And when we try to be nice, and the next key I'll talk about is clear as kind. When we try to be nice, that's when we can end up tolerating mediocrity. And so when we talk about bringing in accountability, giving people the why is going to be huge for them to understand why are we tracking this now? Well, we may have just spent a whole bunch of money to put a new FSM in. We have all this data. Without looking at the data, it's really hard to hold yourself accountable. And you maybe this was one of the aha moments from an owner yesterday where he goes, well, I hold them accountable. And I said, to what? How do they know what the numbers are? And he's been using an FSM, right? And I was like, but you can't actually, if you don't know your numbers, then how can you possibly say that you know that they're doing good? I mean, we may have some financial numbers to know, right? But really, we're kind of flying blind, and then we're even coaching them blind, which isn't going to be great. So, what I want to ask the group is, are you tracking KPIs? And when we talk about that, I mean, KPIs. I'm talking, are you tracking something in your business? And if you are tracking something for your technicians specifically, how many metrics are you tracking? And I just like to get a gauge on this.
Yeah, I mean, as we're collecting those kind of poll questions, can you tease out how many we should be tracking? Is there like a sweet spot?
So what we talked about yesterday, and my partner that I was doing this with yesterday, he's got 25 years in the trades and has run multiple home service businesses. He said don't track more than five. They track. So I will tell you internally as a leadership team, they're tracking 12, but they're only bringing five into the one-on-one. And that's in terms of best practice. They're like it's one of those things where and I it's there at some point there's so much data, it's really going to be up to you. And I'll give you an example in a little bit of the metrics that we talked about yesterday that they recommend. And I don't want to, this is their data, not mine, and I want to be very clear about that. These are the metrics that they suggested for contractors to be watching. Do what you think makes sense for you. That's the hard part. You can go to five different sessions at a conference or listen to a webinar, right? And you may get five different answers. I would say my encouragement to you is what gets measured gets done. If the measurements you're tracking are going to lead to performance or behavior change, those are the metrics you want to be watching. And you need to bring them into a technician's world too. So let me give you an example. A couple best practices before I show you the kind of green, yellow, red scorecard that you may have heard of. This is the model that I've seen used in a variety of different shops. The biggest one, if you have not started with any sort of tracking in your company at all, and that is totally fine. We all got to start somewhere. I would encourage you to start with leadership. And by that, I mean department leaders. Start with the department, have the leader create a scorecard. What metrics are you talking about in your potentially management teams that you're talking about in that management team meeting that you want to cascade down to the department level? Start with your department leaders first, getting comfortable, one, them having conversations around metrics and whether we're on track, off track, are we trending up, down, sideways, maybe flat in some areas. Get the department leaders comfortable with having conversations around KPIs. Give them the why of saying, hey, we want to, maybe your reason is you want to grow the business and you want to do that through growing your people. And we have to know our numbers and we have to be really disciplined about that. That was a conversation that we had yesterday with one of the owners, because he said, I have some department leaders that have been with me for 15, 20 years and we've never tracked anything. And I know the importance of tracking it, but how do I get their buy-in? And I was like, well, start with having them first, invite them into the conversation, help them make sure they understand the why behind it. And then I would say, don't do it for them, invite them into it, because if I have creation of that scorecard, I'm going to have more ownership naturally of making sure that the numbers are right, that I'm holding my people accountable to them. That's really the first thing. And max, I wouldn't do more than five metrics is what we talked about yesterday. The more you have, the more confusing and less clear it gets. It also gives you more fuel for excuses potentially if they're not measuring up. Now, we want outcomes over activities. I want to make sure that, and we'll talk about one-on-ones in a second. That's another thing I'll get on my soapbox about in terms of what I see the companies that are scaling and growing and doing things well, they're having one-on-ones. If you cannot measure that metric weekly or biweekly, then it shouldn't go on your scorecard. It's going to take too much time. It just doesn't make sense. You're going to be tracking it and it might be more work than it's even worth. So if you can't track it, because again, we want to change the activity that they're doing, that's what we're going to want to look at. And when I say owned by the employee, not the manager, again, if we're talking about starting with with the department leader, that's what I mean by that. And we'll get into that in just a little bit here. Okay, so I'm going to spend a decent amount of time on this since I know this is kind of a lot to look at if you haven't before. This is an example of a service tech scorecard. It comes from a partner of mine, LZL Home Services Performance Group. They're out of Chicago, and this is what they do in terms of coaching with their contractors. Now, this is a template that we can use for any role, but the conversation that we're going to have for right now is around the service tech. And I'll just take like the first line, average ticket, right? You can make this number whatever it means for you for winning, warning, or losing. This is just an example that again we used yesterday for a particular customer. This was kind of like the gauge that they used for their home service business. So that's what they were talking about, was kind of you define what these characteristics are in terms of a template. Then you can have on the left here, you have current. So it's kind of like, okay, what are we at right now? That would be if this is a service tech who's coming into a one-on-one, I'm wanting them to fill that in ahead of time. Maybe I'm putting that on a document that I fill out for a one-on-one, that I'm having them, the top part is a scorecard, bottom part is a couple coaching questions. Those are a couple things I wanted to point out to you. Aside from the numbers, I don't want you to get kind of too wrapped around the numbers for they're just an example for right now. The behavior change or coaching points I want to bring out are in the bottom of the page. So if they're red or yellow for 2 weeks, the next step in this case is a mandatory ride along with a script review, because they're missing some part of it, right? And when I say that it's a ride along, maybe they're having a lower average ticket. That's when you're going to partner that tech that's maybe in the red or yellow, partner them with a tech that's in the green, and have them learn from each other, and they can hear how one does things, says things versus the other. And that's one of the best practices that I've also seen, is how are we helping those technicians learn and grow from each other? Because you may not have, probably won't have a tech that's got green on their entire scorecard. You might, but there's going to be some spots where they're winning, and some spots where they may be not, I won't say losing, but mourning, right? Maybe there's always opportunity, in my opinion. There's always opportunity to grow. It's hard to shoot for that 100, but maybe some weeks it's easier than others. So that's essentially what that can look like in terms of next steps for the coaching piece of it when we enter it into a conversation. Now,
You
the
mind
other part oh, go ahead.
going back to that last slide and
Yeah.
just kind of talking to the process of how we're deciding the kind of tiers, like what's the ceiling and the floor for each of those kind of green, yellow, red, and how are we going about kind of figuring out those
So
windows?
that's going to be a leadership decision. Again, like that's admittedly not entirely my lane when it comes to determining the metrics and knowing the business side of it. I'm more focused on, one, do you have a scorecard that you're keeping people accountable to? And is your leadership team aligned in terms of, this is what good looks like, this is what green looks like, this is what yellow looks like? That's going to be a conversation that is going to happen at that leadership level. You just want to make sure that there's buy-in, that we obviously don't have like somebody coaching to something that we agreed upon in leadership. That's not what the standard is that we set. Does that make sense, CJ?
Yeah,
Did I
that
answer
does.
your question? Okay. Yeah, and so this is the idea of an individual scorecard, and you can decide if you want it to be a department-wide scorecard or what you want to put out there. I mean, it's really going to be based on the company itself and what you want to share. Now, when it comes to gaps, there are certain things that are gaps that we want to solve for. If there is a clarity gap, someone doesn't understand the expectation of maybe one of those metrics. I'm not sure how the heck I'm supposed to get my average ticket up to that amount of money. Okay, then let's talk about that, and let's make sure that, like, if you didn't understand that was the expectation, that's on me as your leader to fix that, or to make sure that you're clear on that. Maybe I need to document it better. Something, got missed along the line. Now, if it's a skill gap, and an example of a skill gap would be like, you have, I'll actually give you a real world example. This was from a GM, service manager that I talked to last week. And he was saying that when he looked back at one of his techs, he had 4 out of 5 hearth jobs that he did the week before, and all 4 out of 5 of them were callbacks. And he went, "Oh shoot, that is, I don't think. I mean, one could say, well, that's on that tech. Sure, but he did was this particular manager was like, no, that's on me. We haven't trained him well enough on Hearth. Apparently we missed something. And so I need to go back and I need to put in a training plan, give him a resource, something to that effect to make sure that he can come up to par on that. And so where a skill gap, when I say coaching plan, it could be me as the manager to create it. It could be me coaching that particular tech on part of the process that perhaps are missing. Now, a will gap. So it's you may have heard skill or will. That's what I'm talking about here is the will. Like, does this person have do they want it? Is a better way to kind of to maybe say that. So a will gap would be a technician not completing their paperwork on time or not getting all their pictures in on time. They understand the expectation, they're just not doing the behavior that is expected of them. And at that point, the feedback needs to be most likely discipline going, I mean, what are we not understanding? Why are we not doing it? This was the behavior I needed to happen out of you, and you're not showing that behavior. Okay. So that's essentially the action plan that I would think about. And when we're talking about an action plan, just as a side note, this is my HR hat coming in, but when we're talking about an action plan, I want that to be documented. I want the employee to know what's expected of them in terms of how are we going to fix this? If it's a disciplinary action, I'm not saying you have to put them on a PIP necessarily, but let's have it documented and recap maybe by email or at least have it printed off and have them sign it off on it. We want to be clear about what the action is, what's needed to complete that action to bring it up to the level it needs to be. I also want to talk about who's owning that plan. And if that plan is not met, what is the consequence? These are all things when we talk about being very clear, all of those things are things that I want to make sure that I, as the manager, have clearly understood and the employee understands. Who is owning the action plan? When does it need to be completed? If there's a consequence, like if we don't meet that by whatever date, that's the other part is time bound, have it be that, then what? Right? And so the other part, the last piece I want to make a note of is sometimes we get very critical on giving feedback. We only give it when things go sideways, right? If there is no gap, I would recommend if they're in the green on something, shout them out. Tell them, hey, so what I've had, I've talked to a couple different GMs that I'm coaching right now currently. One of them always brings in a data point of some job that went really well the previous week. He also brings in a data point, only one of each, right? Something they're doing well, something they're doing not so well, or they have an opportunity to improve. So that's where I want it to be both, because what I don't want someone to do is come into a one-on-one and feel like they're in the principal's office and they're gonna be getting in trouble for this. And every time they come into your office, it's because they did something wrong. So just want to recognize when things are going well, because I also think that at times, this is a little bit of DISC language for those of you that may know DISC. It's a behavioral assessment. A lot of times I'll see the D, or the dominant driver style, come across in owners, or the C, which is the accuracy kind of compliant style. In either case, those styles, when we're talking from a communication standpoint, those styles can come across where they want to focus on the task. They don't necessarily want to deal with the people side or the small talk side of it. And so what we end up doing is when we have those styles in leadership, and sometimes they don't know what they don't know, they tend to get more critical about the work and don't remember to always praise people when it's going well. And I know that there is a sentiment of really have to praise them for doing their job. Yes, yes, you do. Because I would rather work for somebody that praised me for doing my job and doing it well than only called things out when I was doing things wrong. It's a cultural thing. I will also die on that hill.
Also, right? Like, do you want your husband or wife to acknowledge you for being great and helping out and being a good parent? Do you want
Right.
to acknowledge your child for doing something correctly instead of always, scolding them for doing things wrong? Of course. So that's kind of stuck out to me. And I'm wondering if you have sort of a framework for giving feedback.
Yep. Yes, I do. And I will get to that. And that is the third key is it's easy to say, just give the feedback. I know it's much harder to do it. So I'll give you the three-part formula for that in just a second. Okay. So last thing before we move on from scorecards is I want to talk about the public versus private scorecards. So the leaderboard is what I think of when I'm thinking a public view. It's effort-based, it's controllable, and it's even gamified. And what I mean by gamified, I have a client that started doing the scorecards or leaderboards, excuse me. Started doing the leaderboards, and they had a technician competition, and it was monthly. You can do quarterly, whatever works for you. But essentially, they had like snowball fight in winter. They had a dunk contest in summer, where the dunk tank, I should say, for they have a leader, but they would have it could be tech versus tech, department versus department, but they made the leaderboards gamified and made it more fun where they're all rallying towards that same cause. And so some examples of what those metrics could be would be booking rate, memberships, average ticket, any of those things could be potentially on the leaderboard. Again, it's up to you on what you want to measure in your company and what you want to drive behavior. And the whole thing behind scorecards is, again, what gets measured gets done, but it's also what is going to incentivize the behavior for them to keep doing things a certain way. So that's a little bit about public. Now, private scorecards, those are going to be where we're going to have those in one-on-ones. I'll get to one-on-ones in just a moment if we're not sure of, yeah, what that means or how we do that. We'll talk about that. But where I'm going to use scorecards developmentally, so meaning like a developmental scorecard would be, I want you to work on this particular goal. I want you to work on your average ticket. Okay. Now, a sensitive talking point in a one-on-one is going to be something like their appearance, maybe their uniform appearance, maybe their personal grooming, things like that. Those are going to be things that we are potentially going to be pulling out in a conversation referencing a scorecard in a one-on-one. So that's what I mean, a skills gap. Like those are when you think about the technician scorecard, to me, those are things we're going to pull out one data point, only one, don't make it more than that, that they're going to focus on in that conversation to coach through. And I have at the bottom here, public metrics create pace. Again, I'm trying to establish the norm for behaviors in the company of like, this is what we want out of you, what we expect out of you. Private metrics create growth. Those are the conversations where you can take the time as their manager to say, how can I help you win? How can I help you get that goal completed? Because I know you are saving up for that ring for your girlfriend, or you want to buy that new house or new car, some kind of bigger life things. That's where we can create that growth. But you spending time with someone in that role, oh my gosh, the amount of HVAC companies that don't spend the time, even just doing one-on-ones, this is where it creates such a cultural loyalty to your employees. Like, yes, I could pay you more, or I could invest in your growth, and we can have these conversations where I'm taking my time to make sure that I'm growing and developing you. And not every company does that. And man, is that a huge just retention factor and loyalty factor when you do that.
Totally
So
like point of view, Elise, and just I just wanted to call that out, understanding your employees and their goals and being able to align those with the company goals can always put the company goal back into context with how the individual is not getting lost in that kind of company goal. They're tracking their personal goal right alongside with the company goal. So that's a really good perspective.
yeah. Yeah, thank you. And we'll talk about that even in one-on-one. So when I say clear is kind, the best vehicle for us to be doing this comes from Brene Brown, clear is kind. One of the biggest areas that we can develop clear expectations, clear communication, just an understanding of one another, employee to manager, is in your one-on-ones. So my question to the audience right now is, are we having one-on-ones? Are we having them with our department leaders? We'll leave it at, we'll start there. And if we are, how often are we doing them? Weekly, bi-weekly, monthly? I know it depends probably on how many employees you have. You're like, I have 17 techs reporting to me, or I have, however many managers potentially. I understand. I believe me, I very, very, very much understand the time constraint and going, oh my gosh, another effing meeting. I get it. We'll talk about that. That is the biggest objection I have to overcome with one-on-ones.
And at least if, our guests are one of the people, who do it annually or quarterly, because they're checking that box and they're getting it done, but they're not necessarily, you know, implementing anything they're finding out in there. Like, is that frequent enough, or what would you recommend as a frequency for a one-on-one?
A one-on-one should happen. at a minimum biweekly. Now I have an install manager I'm working with, and he has 13 texts that report to him. I think that was, yeah, 13. And he was like, for me to do that in 1 week would be, I simply don't have the time. And he's like, and I don't want it to become a check the box thing. Okay, fine. Then break it up and do one a day, right? Like that's how he does that. And the biggest thing is if you're going to coach to performance, you having those regular touch bases with people, it's really hard. I don't know about you, but like if I have a meeting, right? Say you and I meet every other week, it's a little easier for me to remember what we talked about last time and even bring that through. But past 2 weeks, things are getting fuzzy. I'm probably going to be rehashing the same stuff we already talked about last time. And that's one of those EOS, it's based on the book Traction. That was one of those disciplines that I learned when we did EOS at a couple companies I worked for, was you can do your weekly, team meetings. You can try them every other week. We definitely tried it every other week. We ended up rehashing the same stuff in a whole team setting, which was even more furious, right? Or infuriating was we would sit there as a team and I'd be like, oh my God, we talked about this 2 weeks ago. Are we really like this? Okay, the issue still exists, but didn't we have the solve for this like 2 weeks ago? And again, I think that it's too much time in between if I'm coaching behavior. Now, if I'm talking career path, training plan, where do you want to go? How can I help you get there? Quarterly might not be so bad. I actually have quite a few companies that are doing quarterly kind of career pathing conversations outside of the monthly or biweekly one-on-ones that they're having um, on performance. So that could be another way that you could try to break that out. But when I'm talking about one-on-ones, the ones that I advocate for take no more than 20 minutes per person. And it's a value add, it should be, and it's an opportunity for them to create connection with their people, to give feedback. But all that to say, I'm really curious to know, do we have any people that are doing one-on-ones based on the poll? What are the results?
Yeah, so I mentioned annually and quarterly because those were the
Okay.
results.
Okay. And that could be, I mean, for if they want to drop in chat, I'd be curious to know, is it the number of employees you have reporting to you? It's just probably a lot. So maybe that's realistically what you can do in your amount of time. I just think that's really tricky because it's hard to see any consistency. If I'm trying to change my behavior and I'm tracking that week after week, there's a lot of weeks that go in between, especially in a quarter. That's got to be really hard to figure out, okay, I did this thing, did it work or did it not? And it's hard to wrap your head around it because like you think about anything, even like a financial scorecard, right? Like is it leading or lagging? Well, how am I able to know if I'm only pulling that report maybe every quarter? 3 months is a lot of time, and there's been a lot of jobs and customer interactions. There's been a lot of time in between that, so I would really encourage them to challenge themselves to look at their calendar and go, okay, how can I make this happen? Heck, even if you can get it down to monthly, it's still better than quarterly. And or how can I get visibility to my team with those metrics that they could start doing that? Again, I don't know, it's not always easy to just like delegate that off, but you got to start with something going, maybe it's pulling the metrics and you're saying, don't pull metrics right now, maybe I should. Or we can incorporate the one-on-ones. So let me talk about one-on-ones. And I just want to talk about features and benefits. I know that that's language that we usually use in this industry, so I wanted to bring that in here. But when
And
I talked, go
at
ahead.
least if I could interject quickly, like some contractors I talk to are just like, hey, well, I have a weekly team meeting, and so I'm talking to my people weekly, or
Yeah.
sometimes I'm having a daily meeting. So I know what's going on with my people. I talk to them every day. So I just want to encourage everyone to really kind of see this through that lens and understand that there are stark differences between one-on-one meetings and then like full team meetings.
Yeah, and that's usually the feedback I will give to managers when they're like, I hear that more often than not is, yeah, I talk to my people all the time. Right, but like solving their issues when they call you and they have a customer standing in front of them or whatever, that's going to be different than carving out time in your schedule so that your employee knows that you're a priority to them. That's the stark contrast between, yes, I talk to my people all the time. That's great. I'm glad that you're there for them, that you're approachable, that you're available. On the flip side, though, the one-on-ones can allow you to, it's a great place for you to give and receive feedback. I say give it to the employee, but also ask for it as the leader. You modeling how to ask for feedback and receive that feedback is going to be a really a gauge of how often people are going to open up to you in the future when you do ask for feedback. If you shut down and you kind of like get defensive, well, your people are probably going to get pretty quiet on you. So really, those are some of the main benefits to a one-on-one. Now, some things that I would say in terms of features or how we do a one-on-one well, it's a one-to-one coaching conversation. Take one data point from the scorecard and review it, and then share one thing they did since the last meeting. Those are the things that I want to hear from them, and I want to lead the way, right? Like, here's something you did great in this job last week. Here's something that we can work on. Let's talk about it. And they should just know it, right? So that's what I'm thinking about when I talk best practices for one-on-ones. Let me give you my meeting agenda. Again, you take it for what it's worth, but this is what the one that I've been teaching to contractors for the last going on 3 years, and we're at about 300 contractors that I've shared this particular template with. So this one, since the last time we met, what has been going well, and what is something you're proud of? I want to gauge one. I want to gauge their self-awareness a little bit. I would like to know how much they're even giving themselves, praise or kudos, or going like, yeah, I'm really proud of that. I also want to see them light up when they talk about it. Those are some things I would do. Now, best practices, again, sending the agenda ahead of time to people, having the meetings calendared is the other two things I would say for one-on-ones when you're starting them. If you're thinking about, I haven't started one-on-ones before, that's a different conversation. You can really, again, tell them the why. I want to be a better leader for you, so we're going to start having one-on-ones. I want to make sure that I'm available for you and we're spending time every insert cadence here, right? Every month, maybe every other week. Those are how you can tee up that conversation. But these first two questions are really for them to be reflective, and I want to gauge how well they know themselves. Now, the other thing is, you probably know what techs will do well at certain jobs, where I'm going to put them, right? But me asking them what's been frustrating them and what are they like, what's been going well for them or not so well, are ways that I can get an idea of, are they in the right seat? Do they like the role they're in? I had a service manager, so actually I had an install manager and service manager from the same company that was in one of my virtual series, and they had started doing one-on-ones. They hadn't done them before, started doing one-on-ones, and they found out that one of their service installers, I should say, wasn't loving the like being in a person's home, didn't like the overall environment, and wanted to go on the service side. He was like, I'd rather just do the clean and checks, the maintenance side of things on the commercial service side. And so those, because of the one-on-ones, they were having conversations at their leadership level to go, well, maybe we should move him over there. I think that might be a better fit for him. So that opened up a conversation that they may not have had otherwise. So those are the two questions I have in my agenda. So again, this is also creating a norm of self-reflection. Oftentimes we don't slow down enough, even in the industry, like in our day to day, more than just industry. I think this is like life. Life is busy and stuff like that. If we can slow down and have some moments of self-reflection, we'd be surprised where we go, huh, maybe I don't, maybe that is draining my energy. Maybe that's not like firing me up like it used to. So the last two questions are going to be around me as a leader asking for feedback. So the first one is, as your leader, what have I done that's helpful and you want me to keep doing more of? And the next one is, what hasn't been as helpful or what would you like me to do differently? And feel free to screenshot any of this stuff. I'm sure you guys probably are taking pictures and doing whatever you need to. These are questions for me. Even if they don't have an answer to these questions, I'm going to keep showing up every single one-on-one asking these questions. Why? Because I want to get better at getting this feedback. I don't want them having this conversation out back behind the warehouse by the dumpster and talking about me rather than to me. And so I'm going to keep showing up, even if it means I get feedback that I may not love, but it will help me grow. Also, if I am jumping in solving problems where I'm not needed, it would be helpful for me to know that. If I'm there to eliminate roadblocks and obstacles, I want to make sure that I'm not the roadblock or obstacle that people are trying to get around, or I'm making things more difficult than I need to be. So those are the four key questions I always have on my meeting agenda. And if we can bring in that scorecard piece as well, that makes it for, again, this is a 20-minute, maybe 30 tops is what we're talking about for one-on-ones. There are a couple questions that I've been adding in recently just to kind of shake things up and switch it up. If you're already doing one-on-ones, these could be a couple things I wanted to just give you for additional just thoughts. If budget were no issue, how would you serve our customers differently? I have a GM that I'm working with right now. He has asked that and he has been really surprised by the question, the answers he's getting to that. It's not always the most expensive solutions, is what he was telling me. He goes, I didn't know that this, there's little improvements they can make. And asking for the guy's feedback is really helpful. The other one, if you are someone who you're at a company, you've already established your values. This is one I want to speak to. If you have core values or values that for your organization, one way you can take that from being a plaque on the wall or a nice saying on a mug or something like that. How did you live out insert core value here this past week? Give me an example. One, this is I want them to understand that we are hiring, firing, rewarding, and that the values are something that we live in the organization. They're not just something that we say because they sound good on like a marketing video or recruiting, like when we're interviewing with somebody. If we took the time to establish our values in our organization, let's let them live and let them breathe and give them the time that they need. And that's the part where it becomes part of the culture and the identity of that organization. So I want to include that one as well. I have a customer that has just has like check boxes basically on their one-on-one agenda where it's got the different core values listed and it basically says check the box for one of the core values you lived last week and tell me a little bit about how you lived it. So that again, some of these questions are going to take time for people to think about. So sending these ahead of time in a calendar invite or printing it off and giving it to them so that they know ahead of time, have those are some really key best practices to doing one-on-ones and doing them really well.
And if I could add some color to that, Elise,
Sure.
uh, taking that question, how did you live out core value this week? Not just in your one-on-ones, but also in your group trainings or your team meetings,
Sure.
and have that highlighted kind of publicly. And I'm thinking of this because in college, I was in Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity, and every week, our core value was to be the true gentleman. And so it's like like nominate someone who is the true gentleman of the week. And so, after kind of a couple months of that, everybody started looking for ways to become the true gentleman of the week, right? And so
Mhm.
if you can instill that kind of philosophy inside your one-on-ones and also bring that out into your group trainings, it's gonna like you deepen that culture and get people looking to do the right thing rather than being reactive to it.
Yes, catching them doing things right rather than doing things wrong, 1,000%. Yeah, and the other piece I want to bring up is at times I don't want us to forget the field, the office staff. We can be very siloed in our recognition and only shout out the techs. If there's an opportunity where you have like a whole company meeting or something where two different departments are coming together, CJ, I love the idea of shouting each other out and being like, "Hey, thank you so much for that last week or for doing this thing." Like, make sure that the recognition is for the office and the field. Sometimes we can, create silos where we didn't mean to by doing that. Okay, last one. Turning data into dialogue. This is really, I'm talking about giving feedback that's meaningful. We have the data point. How do I coach to it? And I'll give you some examples of this in just a second. Before we get into it, I want you to know that again, I'm going to harp on the one-on-ones. If we're doing one-on-ones, it's a place for us to create connection. We have to connect with our people before we can correct them. And so the biggest prerequisite for giving feedback is that I have trust with somebody. And so one of the hindrances or one of the things I hear a lot of times from owners is like, well, I'm not comfortable giving feedback. I don't want a confrontation, or I don't want them to not like me, or I don't want any kind of conflict. I don't like conflict. I avoid it. Okay. My encouragement for you, if you're thinking that, shift your perspective on why you're doing it. I give feedback because I care about the person that I am leading. I care about your growth and your development. And so I want you to be the best version of you. And that's my role as your leader, is to help you get there. And so really, I'm giving them an opportunity to change their behavior. If they choose not to, that is their choice. And then we'll have a different conversation. But the whole point is I want to give them feedback because they need to hear it. And same reason I ask for it in every one-on-one. If there's something I'm doing that I need to hear to change my behavior, I want to know that. So that's just this is a nod from my friend Zach Mercurio. Don't expect your feedback to matter to someone who doesn't feel like they matter to you. Connect before you correct. The other visual I'd like to give you, if you are a visual type person, think about it like I'm giving them a gift. That is the feedback I'm giving you. I'm giving you it because I care about you. And on the flip side, if someone gives you feedback, maybe you don't even like it. Maybe you don't want to hear it. You're like, ah, that really hurt to receive that. If you can receive it as a gift, the very first thing I say when I receive feedback is thank you for the feedback. I don't care if I agree with it or don't agree with it. Thank you for the feedback. Stops me from going down judger path and getting kind of defensive and shitty. And it allows me to pause and go, okay, I'm grateful for this person having the guts to tell me this. I'm grateful for this person telling me this information. I'm going to try to receive it as a gift, even if I feel kind of that heat starting in my chest and I'm getting a little defensive about it. Okay. So the formula I want to give you for this, and this can be for growth feedback where it's something I need them to change behavior, or it's something where it's recognition feedback. Hey, you're doing this great, and I want to shout you out. The formula is FBI, feeling, behavior, and impact. And I'll give you a real quick a couple examples of these. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull that data from the FSM. You're going to pull that one data trend, right? You're going to say, okay, here's what I'm seeing. I'm going to give you the feeling, and I'll give you an example of this in just a second. The behavior is going to be the plus the data, and that's going to tell you I want you to include the impact part of it. And then we're going to go into coaching, and we'll talk about how can we adjust our behavior. Just like it's kind of the idea of like, let's just try this. Let's try it differently next week. Let's see how it goes, right? So I'll give you this for a CSR. I appreciate your hustle. The booking rate rose from 72% to 81, and abandoned calls dropped from 9% to 5%. That means we kept the boards full and we did it without overtime, and we kept the routes the same, right? So we're trying to minimize the amount of change that happens, right? So that's where I want them to know, like, one, I appreciate it. Your efforts don't go unnoticed. I'm pairing that with data, and then I'm also saying, here's the impact though. We kept the boards full without having to use overtime, which is huge. So that's for my CSR. If it's growth feedback, I'm going to have with them. Hey, I'm concerned the average booking time climbed from just over 5 minutes to 7, and customers are waiting longer, and we're missing easy wins. That's a growth feedback example for the CSR. Now, some coaching questions we can ask around that. Is it the greeting, the discovery? Like, where in the process are we having an objection, or where are we having some challenge, right? And so what can we do? How can we prompt this to test this on 5 different calls tomorrow? Now I know we're running on time, so I want to make sure that we wrap this up.
Yeah, you want to jump into the Q&A?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Before we get too sideways on some of these examples.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think that that's all very, very powerful stuff. And as you were saying, receiving feedback well by saying thank you for the compliment. I was getting feedback that I was saying too much. And I was like, F you, dude. But then I thought about it and I'm thinking, well, if I want to position myself as a public speaker, as someone worth listening to, I can't say and like every 3 seconds, right? So
Fair.
I think that's very clear and concise way of approaching feedback that you might not always vibe with. And for the first question that I got, so my team constantly makes excuses and avoids accountability. What shifts do I need to make first?
I appreciate the honesty in it. My question would be back to them is how do you react when they're making excuses? Are we allowing it? Are we calling them out on it? Am I making excuses? Am I walking around modeling that, not realizing that I'm maybe part of the problem, right? It becomes a culture when we allow it. And that's the problem is it's one of those mirror moments where you go, oh, shoot, maybe I have some ownership in it. That would be I know that's answering a question with a question, but without having the conversation, that would be my first thought is, why is it being allowed?
And my immediate thought goes to, are you having one-on-ones? Are you understanding what their performance is due to? What are the excuses about? What are they feeling maybe left behind or their needs not being met? So that would be another question I'd pose to this submitter is, are you doing one-on-ones to figure out what your people actually need or want, or what the layer behind that excuse might be?
Yeah, are we only having, oh, one-on-ones are just for them, but they're not for us? That can also be something where if we don't have the accountability up either, how are we giving accountability or modeling that for our leaders? Or as an owner, am I having one-on-ones with my department leaders?
Right. Well, Elise, we're at time. I want to thank you again so much for joining us and sharing your expertise today. And to everybody that was on the call as well, thanks for investing in yourself and your business. You don't just build these high performance teams by accident, right, Elise? You build them very intentionally. So is there anything you want to leave our guests with today as we sign off?
Busy season is coming. The question isn't whether we're ready, it's are they ready? Are your teams ready to lead?
Right. And if they're not, and if you're not, sign up for that forward motion series. I will be sending out that information along with the recording a little bit later today. And we will kind of send out those few free resources for everybody that joins today. We had Elise's one-on-one training kind of guide to help you have better one-on-ones. And then the AI home service playbook that we have developed alongside Set Sail to help you kind of identify those AI tools that can bring your business to life. Really excited for next week. We're diving into a completely different but equally important topic for growing home service companies. And that's going to be with Tersh Blissett, founder of Trade Automation Pros, for our show called AI Lead Capture for the Trades: How to Book More Jobs Without Adding Headcount. So we're going to give you a plan to cut through the noise of all those AI tools out there that are kind of cluttering up the space, and give you a framework for really implementing these AI lead capture tools that can have a very big impact in your business. So as I sign off today, I will leave you with a chance to register by scanning the QR code on the next scene. But again, thank you, my friends, for joining us here today for the Home Service Insider Series. Keep learning, keep leading, and keep building the kind of service businesses that your team and your customers deserve. We'll see you next week, guys. Thanks. Bye, Elise.